Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tom and Joe Show. We're rounding out our Patreon episodes for the moment and hopefully getting back to pastures, anime, and music very shortly. We have one last Patreon episode to do. Joe, what is the Patreon episode on?
It is on the Kingdom Hearts concert CD.
Yep.
Kingdom Hearts Orchestra World of Tres?
Trez,
Trey?
yep.
Tres.
Because,
Okay.
Yep. Trez, Trey. It's French.
We-
It's French.
Yeah, and my wife makes sure I never say any French words ever.
Yep.
I took 4 years of Spanish.
Yes.
But anyway, on the
Anyway.
topic.
Yes, so...
I am
yep.
going to probably get loud.
This
It's
is
probably
gonna
not
be-
even going...
Yeah.
I'm probably not even going to be at the topic of hand because I am not a fan of Kingdom Hearts.
Oh boy, we'll get...
In fact, I have played the first game, and I've actually find it revolting and offensive. Not in like, oh, they put objectionable, but this offends me in you're wasting my time with this shit.
Oh boy.
So
this is
that's-
gonna be... Yeah.
want to put this up front. So
Yeah.
anybody who wants to listen for a fight, you're probably gonna get it.
Here we are. But we are gonna make... Yeah, so we are also gonna, like, obviously around Joe's 21 year sort of held in rant on Kingdom Hearts, because I could feel like, if you thought the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children episode was like Joe at rant level, this might be this might beat it, I think.
I have been nothing but pleasant to Kingdom Hearts fans.
Mm.
If you enjoy what you enjoy,
Absolutely.
fantastic,
That's why I'm
great.
here.
I can only go to my experience, and my experience is
absolutely
my
fine,
experience.
Yeah, absolutely
So-
fine. But we are also going to sort of discuss more, and obviously around this album, the sort of the hot potato of, is video game music proper music? And particularly, is video game music proper classical music? Yes it is. We'll get into that later. So let's sort of start at the beginning. So this has been one of our Patreon recommendations from Shelley. Hello, Shelley.
Hi. Sorry.
Sorry. Absolutely. If you would like a Patreon, if you would like to have a Patreon episode like this, so we'll sign up to a Patreon. There'll be more details at the end of the episode. So let's start at the beginning. Kingdom Hearts is a Japanese video game series started in 2001 with Kingdom Hearts for the PlayStation 2, directed by everyone's favourite belt fetishist Tetsuya Nomura. In short, the series is the adventures of Sora, Donald, and Goofy through the worlds of various Disney films and obviously series, along with what we could probably describe as the most convoluted plot in pop culture history, penned by Tetsuya Nomura and involving sort of every sort of blend of sort of anime strangeness, because this is a game that around sort of the Disney characters has this really strange, almost soap opera-ish sort of plot going on with evil organizations and groups of people who are either trying to defeat or trying to create the sort of the entity known as Kingdom Hearts. And basically what World of Tres is the third in the series of the Final Fantasy of classical music concerts for the series, obviously, which tour around the world, much like the better known Final Fantasy Distant World series, actually involving largely the same people, including the same conductor. And essentially, it does excerpts from the game's soundtrack as classical music. This is obviously a studio recording rather than a live recording. I think that all made sense.
Yep. The important thing for this one is the studio recording does have what the London and other things had, which is Yoko Shimomura on piano. And I think that's the most important part of this particular series.
Absolutely. So, a little bit of background. the reason I have this and the reason Shelley requested this is because Shelley very kindly, back in the before times, before we were all locked inside from the pandemic for most of 2020, took me to see this as a birthday present, and I've got like the CD and like all the other doohickeys that you pick up at classical music concerts, because this is like, you know, a major part now of, you know, the media thing for, you know, these games. And it's like, okay, you know, you particularly, I mean, at the moment they are doing a major concert tour for Final Fantasy VII, because obviously the remakes come out, and it's the 25th anniversary next year, guys. We're all old now. Yeah,
Yep.
so it's sort of like and I feel we have to sort of approach it partly from this, but we also have to also compare it to other, you know, video game classical music tours, because this is like, you know, one of an increasing industry of video game music as classical, because obviously there is the Distant Worlds group, there is a, you know, another concert tour which is also done by the team who did this, who do music from the Metal Gear Solid, you know, Metal Gear, and obviously you have various concert tours or concert performances that, you know, play excerpts or selections from video game series. And obviously in Japan it's a lot more common. You get things like, you know, Undertale having a full-on classical music concert. You get, you know, things like Pokemon, Phoenix Wright, etc. It's an increasingly common element of the thing, which obviously we'll come to talk about later on when we go about, you know, is video game music proper classical music, you know, what is proper classical music, and, you know, very BBC Radio 3 sort of silliness. So I think we need to sort of slowly approach the sort of the okay, Joe, let's start at the beginning. Why do you not like Kingdom Hearts?
Okay. So,
oh boy,
I was a person who bought it for full price, $60, way back when it came out on release day, and expected to love it.
He's
okay.
preparing.
Yep, I'm preparing. And then you just start, and I mean, it starts off fine, dearly beloved, very pretty, and then you have the tutorial, and then you get to the island, and then you kind of realize, hello, can you hear me? We might have to edit this out because he is not hearing me.
I can hear you now. There we go. Right.
Okay, sorry. I might have been talking away from the mic because I might get loud. And
continue your rant, sir. Continue.
Okay.
Continue.
So we're doing the obstacle courses on the island with the characters from Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy VIII, I think.
Yep.
It's been 20 years. Forgive me.
It's mostly 10. I think it's like
Waka.
It's Tidus, Waka, Yuna, and it's Tidus, Waka, and I'm trying to remember who the other character is.
I think
it's Cypher, isn't it?
The Nunchuck. Is it the Nunchuck girl from Final Fantasy VIII?
I can't remember exactly, but I know it's like, I think it's Yuna, but it's not actually Yuna. Keep in mind,
it's been 25 years, and I avoid Final Fantasy VIII and Kingdom Hearts like the plague, so but
so you're on the island.
Then you were doing on the obstacle course, and the obstacle course is not good. The camera is intrusively getting in your way of jumping on things, which should be easy because this is like teaching you how to navigate the world, and the camera sucks. And then probably to make a long story short, we get to the Disney worlds after, you know, all of the plot stuff that happens, and the first one is Alice in Wonderland. It's empty, it's boring, the direction is poor on where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do, and it's all very dull, and it's just not very good. I don't know what is next, but I think it's Tarzan, maybe.
Yeah, it's Tarzan. I think it goes Alice in Wonderland, Tarzan. Oh god, I'm trying to bloody remember.
Yeah.
So here's my big confession, which I'm just gonna get out of the way. The only Kingdom Hearts game I played all the way through is actually 3.
And I played all the way through Kingdom Hearts 1, so don't tell me I didn't finish it or it gets better or what have you. I finished it, but we get to the Tarzan level. It is the worst designed level I have ever seen in my goddamn life. Like, okay, you enter the world of Tarzan. What are you doing? You are going to find pictures. And they don't tell you where. It's just on this thing where you have to jump off at random places, and then you have to slide down, and then it sends you here, it sends you there, it sends you whatever. And it is awful. And when you're getting it anywhere, it starts the, activated battles, which just get tedious because you have been fighting these same enemies. They just kind of dress up as whatever the world is, the theme is, and then, I am done with this game before I am out of Tarzan. And notice I did not bring up the gummy stuff. Like, everybody knows the gummy stuff. Which is just time wasting.
The gummy ship has never been like I myself think it's like okay, it's and the problem is it's a throwback that like a lot of the elements that sort of don't work, I will admit, do get kept for sort of later adventure, like later ones, and it's still like you're playing, Kingdom Hearts 3, nearly 20 years after, and it's still the gummy ship, and it's still this, and it's still that, and it's like, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, and then you get to where the game's supposed to be better, where Aladdin, Little Mermaid, but the problem is, those two are following the movie plot, and it's just like, I've seen the movie. The movie does it better. I'm not wandering through empty, quiet, pathways of sometimes enemy stuff and just redoing the plot, except not as good as the movies. And it's just like, why am I not watching the movies? Because those are an hour and a half or less, so that doesn't take as much of my time as an RPG. And then by the time, I will admit, the Nightmare Before Christmas area is good because they're actually trying to do something with the plot. The professor is trying to experiment with the Heartlesser. It is doing something relevant to this story and giving it lore, and that's fine. That is good. But it is like 75% through the game, and that's a lot of one of the good parts of this. Like when you get to Hollow Bastion, and then Beast is trying to break down the fucking door and bust some heads because they have Belle, and he wants her to fuck back. And that's good. That is like getting Disney characters to interact with the story instead of them being this own little world. But that is not most of the game. It is dealing with a terrible camera and dealing with directionless, where am I supposed to go gameplay that just sucks up all your time, and the gummy ships, and it is uninteresting. It is boring. The combat isn't particularly good. It's by the end of this, it's just like you're still on the Square Enix high because they do enough of the visual polish, and they have aesthetics that make it feel good. Although even to be on the record, I love Yoko Shimomura, Parasite Eve forever, but the music for the first Kingdom Hearts is not very good. It is 1-minute loops of extremely tedious. We don't have access to the actual scores to these things, so we're going to do something that kind of sounds like it, but it's just like jaunty and kind of tuneless, and there's not enough of it. It gets really, it really focuses the tedium of the experience of playing the first Kingdom Hearts game, and I did not expect them to learn their lesson, and I was paying attention to the news in Kingdom Hearts 2, and then I'm like, okay, we're going to have all these Final Fantasy. Oh, Setzer, Final Fantasy 6, awesome. They are all in, the early part of the game as tutorial characters. Fuck you, fans of Final Fantasy. You thought they were going to interact with Disney characters and you were going to have this, cool adventure? Fuck you.
No, that's that's just for Left for Nomura's favorite. Yep.
Cloud. Yeah, this is where, we spoke. Remember when we spoke about Final Fantasy VII, Advent Children, and emo Cloud, and Cloud being angsty, and Cloud being Guess where that came from? Here in Kingdom Hearts,
I will
where
give he's wearing like he's got a wig and he's got like Vincent's claw, and it's like, come on, guys.
yeah,
Like, looking like something out of like
yeah.
Hot Topic circa 2002.
And
Oh,
he's in the arena fighting because he is an emo in
yep.
grief, and this is all he's good for, is a killing machine or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, a PG killing machine
A
because
PG
Kingdom Hearts. But I wouldn't have had as much of a problem with it if the Hercules area world wasn't just an arena battle area.
Yeah. And then,
I mean,
of course,
that's my only thing with that.
yeah.
But
No, that's fair.
so after hearing the news of Kingdom Hearts, I just like cut off this franchise. It was going to do nothing for me, and I was just gonna do nothing but rage. And it's like all of those people like who I don't have to be the one who has to experience this. You don't have to like keep hammering your hand with attack hammer because just because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, I will,
so
and this is where I need to step in, because I feel like,
Yeah.
one is a product of its time. It is a very late 90s, very early 2000s action RPG, and that was a saturated market in the early 2000s is, yeah, it's like all those action RPG franchises that we now seemingly have lost to the sands of time, stuff like Legacy of Kain and Soul Reaver and other
Also, this is kind of, I know I said Square Enix, but it's probably Squaresoft. This was before when they were throwing money everywhere to try to get everything to stick, and then they got themselves in financial trouble, merged with Square Enix, and then they kind of got their shit together, at least to a brand and like some oversight and some organization instead of the bouncer.
Oh boy, which is basically almost like a spiritual prequel to Kingdom Hearts in terms of it's let Tetsuya Nomura do what the fuck he wants and he makes a video game.
I mean, he rips off the Metropolis anime that came out at that time.
Absolutely, but it's Nomura. I mean, we have to also talk about the elephant in the room, which was Disney themselves were not in great shape at this period either. This is like early 2000s Disney.
This is Treasure Planet, Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Although to be clear, I love the shit out of Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
I love both of them, and it's like if there is
they
one.
Flopped.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like at that point Disney were like, shit, we actually genuinely are in financial straits. Disneyland Paris is basically just about turning cash. We are not. Michael Eisner has obviously is now 6 years past obviously the loss of Frank Wells, is basically spiraling out of control. Disneyland have built and we're not going to get into defunct land sort of territory, but Disney are building the Disney the California Adventure and other sort of bizarre approaches to this, which is to say Disney as a company are basically functionally rudderless and are being basically run by a guy who is no longer sure of what he wants to be as the CEO of probably one of the most powerful entertainment companies in the world. It's two companies that are basically on the brink, clinging to each other and going, fuck, we need to make something good.
Yeah, and
they get better. The Kingdom Hearts series gets better. I mean, Kingdom Hearts 2 is probably still the highlight of the series. I mean, it's still that perfect sort of balance between the Disney stuff, all the stuff, and the other stuff, the actual plot stuff. I mean, in between, we obviously have by this point, Organization 13. We get all this sort of very surprisingly sort of dark lore for again a PG-rated game. Everything starts to sort of click into place. Nomura starts doing his typical, my god, you've been trailing this for sort of 15 years sort of bullshit.
Yeah.
And it starts to get better, and like you do, obviously you still get games that are like in the series that are interesting, like the game where you actually murder your best friend. Yeah, 358 over
Yep.
2 days, 358 over 2 days, and the titles start getting sillier as well.
Mhm.
And it's
But
like,
the
yeah,
silly titles are kind of what threw me away.
yeah,
Besides my just
that's
interest,
yeah,
it's like
no,
there's so many sequels and little sub
yeah,
stories, and like I don't
yeah.
care.
I mean,
And I,
yeah,
to a certain extent, when it got into Organization 13, I'm like, this. I am not going to get what I want out of this series.
no,
Like, to compared to another thing, and I'm gonna get pitchforks out on this one too. Super Mario RPG. I do not think the Mario franchise and Square Enix blended very
mm,
well in that. The gameplay is great for the most part, except I think the three-force perspective and jumping does not work. If you've ever played Landstalker for the Sega Genesis, it
mm,
has that same problem. But where the jumping, you built an entire game on jumping, and the jumping doesn't feel right. But that's another thing. But
yeah,
the this bright the thing about Nintendo and sort of Disney is they are kind of the same corporate overlords
yeah.
whose
It's that very
strengths
clean, very Mario and
very clean,
yeah,
but they are very clean, simple emotions. You could say
yeah.
simple and clean emotions,
Oh
but
damn, but
but yeah,
yeah, and
but it is very there, and what this Final Fantasy Tetsuya Nomura stuff is getting this very convoluted lore for obviously teenagers and higher, and it's mixing with the simple emotions. Like, you know what the characters in Disney movies are after, you know what they're doing, but there are like,
mm.
from what I understand, obviously I have not played Kingdom Hearts 2 and everything else, but it seems like there's a lot of, cul-de-sacs, blinding corners, and like
Yeah.
a lot of plot stuff. And I feel like they dilute each other
Mm.
and they don't match well. And that is ultimately my biggest problem.
Which is a fair assumption. I do feel like there is this very Kingdom Hearts almost runs on this dissonance of having Mickey Mouse talk about the door to darkness, and sort of really you've got the current voice actor for Mickey Mouse, and other Disney characters spouting these really complex sort of there is a very famous line in the Kingdom Hearts manga, and I'm gonna read it in full because you got to imagine this is in the voice of Donald Duck. I'm not going to
I
do the.
have questions of whether that one is real or not. I have.
It's real. It's real. It's in the manga.
Okay.
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 Here we go. Just gonna bring this up on Google. Yeah. So this is by the way, this is real. This is from the Kingdom Hearts manga. This is not an edited thing. And I'm gonna try. I should have brought this up earlier, but fuck. Yeah. Quote. And you gotta remember, this is in the voice of Donald Duck. Everyone's favourite childhood. A character beloved in so much in Sweden that the annual Christmas celebration of Disney films is named after him, not barking Mickey Mouse. Every world is defined by its particular boundaries, within which some understandings of reality emerges as truth. Two truths cannot coexist, and so from the introduction of foreign bodies is conflict and chaos spawned. That's why we limit our involvement in local affairs. And this is an explanation of why Sora wears various sort of costumes to match into environments in these games. Yeah, it's one of these. And I will say this, they're at the heart of Kingdom Hearts. It is is this taking itself entirely seriously? Is this Tetsuya Nomura's big epic 20-year fanfic of his characters interacting with Disney characters in this sort of overly complex as something that rivals the fucking Wire for complexity and number of characters. There are something, the organization is 13 people alone. That's without counting any other major characters, of which there are about 24. And yeah, it's like, this is ridiculous. Why is this? And the thing is with the more recent games, and as particularly obviously as Disney become this absolutely unstoppable cultural Goliath, they have started to lean very gently on Square Enix and go, do you know what, guys? It'd be really great if we saw more Disney stuff in this game. And this obviously becomes very prominent, particularly in 3. We will eventually get onto talking about what the music on this CD is.
Yeah, we're 25 minutes and we're not talking about the subject.
Right. Okay, let's just wrap this up. So basically, yeah, Kingdom Hearts is the video game equivalent of Marmite. There are people who think this is, a messy, overwritten, belt-filled, self-indulgent fanfic of a series in which, basically Fujoshi shit and, the plot of a Saturday morning anime and, all this sort of collides with Disney. And there are some people who go, these are complex, really in some cases surprisingly well written or surprisingly insightful games made by a guy who clearly loves the shit out of Disney, that are like, this love letter to Disney, albeit with, some of his characters in, and sort of, has homages to both Walt Disney and his former boss, that it's like this, we're just basically on Tetsuya Nomura's wild ride, and if you choose to get on or get off, that's your choice. He's going to be here regardless of what either of us say. So yeah, kind of let's nearly half an hour into this episode, so we don't end up with another hour and a half episode. Let's get on to this this music, shall we? So
okay. So the concert, I think I would probably not the one equipped to it, but it is one half of it. At least the CD version is just various the Kingdom Hearts games. It's just stuff from there, and then the second half is symphonic suites of Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, pretty much.
And yep, it's with the team that did Distant Worlds. And to get my background, I have gone to a lot of Distant Worlds I think either 3 or 4. And I went to when it was back in Dear Friends in Hartford, Connecticut. I don't know how much time we'll have for a personal story, but I went there. I woke up with red eyes because my red eyes had gotten irritated, so I had to go through, and then I had to clean out the office on my work day, which made my eyes worse. And then I had to drive through New York traffic on Friday afternoon to get to Connecticut, and then I couldn't meet up with my friends because it had taken me 4 hours to get from around the GW Bridge to Hartford, Connecticut, which is it should be 2 hours. It was twice that, but. Oof. So I am here. I get there just in time for the Final Fantasy VIII opening thing, which I am fine skipping. But so and have a good time with the first half, and then there's me who looks like absolute trash. I am dressed barely formal enough to be allowed into the concert hall, and then this guy who's working at the concert hall walks up to me and says, "Wow, this is actually really good. Could you give me the story?" And it's like, you picked out all the people in the crowd to give you the story, and you picked out the most who looks strung out, might be on something. But that's my dear friend's story. I had to get that out. But yeah, I've been to. Yeah. But they have this down to an art. The problem is, I think they've done a few concerts and orchestral stuff before this, and the problem is when they get to Distant Worlds 4 and 5, they're getting thin on library, and the more melodic stuff gets left behind, and I think that might be sort of the issue with the Kingdom Hearts Orchestra, because it feels like instead of experiencing I'll just go ahead and talk about the baseline of it. Is the Final Fantasy Symphonic Suite, the original one, that it's basically the melodies from the games you played, but they're orchestral. So you get to like live in these melodies, but they're so beautifully, organized. And also you get one random song with a drum machine. I'm not sure where it came from, but
Genova.
whatever.
Genova, I'm pretty sure that has the drum machine. Yeah, the thing is with the Distant Worlds concerts is they are... One, Final Fantasy is obviously not a linear series. Like, there is it's not, you do not have to play Final Fantasy 1 to understand Final Fantasy 2, and etc, etc. The other thing is, Final Fantasy has been going at this point for, as of next year, 35 years, and has a lot more games to pick music from.
Yes.
This is before they started putting, like, two Final Fantasy... This is before they started putting two Final Fantasy 14 songs in one after another.
Yeah.
At least in the London sense, because obviously in the London thing, they have the advantage of having the entire Royal Albert Hall and the organ. Because this is one of the few times they can actually play Dancing Mad with a fucking organ.
Yeah. And
it's fucking awesome.
And I was lucky enough to get to an Omaha concert that was on Nobuo Uematsu's birthday. So they got a choir in for the stuff, and they got opera singers for the Final Fantasy VI opera.
Yeah.
And Maria was very pregnant.
Yeah, the opera is like one of the best, like, in terms of video game classical music, if you want to see, probably the best that the genre has. And yes, I am extremely biased in this. Yeah, go see Distant Worlds. Distant Worlds is like, considering you can go to the Royal Albert Hall, and it's like on in the Royal Albert Hall about every 2 years. And no, we're not getting paid by the Royal Albert Hall to keep saying the Royal Albert Hall. It is on over about every 2 years, and seriously, if you can get tickets, you can get tickets to the Royal Albert Hall if you are British. If not, you probably can get them in Europe. I don't know. The Royal Albert Hall is basically this really great British institution wherein you can, because it is essentially the People's Albert Hall, because it is, the main UK music venue for classical music, because this is where they did the BBC proms. The tickets can go as low as 18 quid. I don't know what that is in dollars. I think it's about $20-$25 to go and sit and watch, classical music for 3 hours with an interval. Some of the best, classical music, full stop. And that's, not only Final Fantasy but the BBC proms, etc. Anyway, back to point. So yeah, this is like, I feel the problem with this Kingdom Hearts thing, with the Kingdom Hearts Orchestra tour in comparison, is it very much has to go, here is Kingdom Hearts 1, here is Kingdom Hearts 2, here's Kingdom Hearts, all the side games, here's, Birth by Sleep, and, Dream Dot Distance, and all these other things, and, here's the music for that. We can't play you anything too important, because, we might spoil this game for you, because, it's... And that's the thing I feel that is, so... Let's talk about this in very, very quick, brush strokes, because, hey, it's, I feel like this is more an episode where we talk about what we, the surrounding elements for. So, we start with Dearly Beloved, which is, probably the most famous bit of music from Kingdom Hearts, which is, which is great. It's lovely. It's ended up on,
To its credit, the opening of Dearly Beloved, the Kingdom Hearts 3 version, goes hard, and they have absolutely Yoko Shimomura, the composer.
I believe she did it live in London as well, which is pretty fucking awesome to have her. It's like, there she is. There's Yoko Shimomura. Holy shit. Yeah.
Yep. And Yoko Shimomura playing piano is probably the greatest asset to any Yoko Shimomura score. Yeah. Obviously, you go back to Parasite Eve, the opening to that, and it is just the most awesome, most metal thing in it ever. And it's not even trying to be metal. It's just trying to be a hardcore, just intro to this action horror thing.
Yeah. Very short aside on Yoko Shimomura. Yoko Shimomura is a long-term Japanese video game composer. She has done multiple games at Square Enix, including Final Fantasy 15, but is probably most famous as the woman who wrote Guile's theme, because she did the entire fucking soundtrack for Street Fighter 2. Which makes her probably the most badass person in the entire we will ever talk about on this episode.
Yeah, no matter what I would say about the Kingdom Hearts soundtrack, she can still probably fuck me up with her piano. So there's that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but at this point we then get music from Kingdom Hearts 1, followed by music from Kingdom Hearts 2, followed by music from 358 2 Days, and music for Birth by Sea. Now, there's two problems with this. One, these are like, 5-6 minute bits of, basically medleys. Problem number two, most of this 5 or 6 minute medley has actually been done a lot better in the previous 2 installments of this. Yeah, this is the problem with this. This is very much...
It's very truncated. It's very... You don't get to live in the moment like you get to live in the moment of like Final Fantasy Symphonic Suite. It allows time, every melody it's visiting to breathe.
Yeah.
What I compared this album to, and I think you'll agree, is it's kind of a train ride, and the train is going fairly fast. So if you find something you like, it's gone as fast as the stuff as the boring scenery. So it just keeps rolling, and there are the symphonic suites that are a little better, but it still feels like it's it's a train moving through the location. It's not living in it.
Yeah, and compared to some of the really nice versions from the other 2 concerts, which are First Breath and World Tour, the sort of the releases of these, it feels a little bit like, come on guys, this is like a nearly 2.5-3 hour concert. And I think at the concert they did actually play them a lot long. They did actually, it was not the version on the CD. It was, a longer version, and there was more to it. But it's still like, well, that's great for whoever went and saw the concert. As it stands, it's still it's 6 minutes for like an entire 20-30 hour game score. Okay. And then the other half of this is the stuff from Kingdom Hearts 3, and you've got to remember at this point, because we've only recently had the physical and digital release of Kingdom Hearts 3 soundtrack, this was literally it in terms of actually physical releases you could have of this game's soundtrack. And the other thing I'm going to really visit, this is my bugbear. Okay, so Kingdom Hearts obviously is very, very... There's really 2 musical elements to Kingdom Hearts, and one of which we've not spoken about yet, which is the one and only Utada Hikaru, who is just like, one of the best sort of Japanese contemporary, pop musicians. And none of these Distant Worlds tours, none of the Kingdom Hearts like Orchestra tours actually feature her music. They play them live because they played both a really, really nice version of obviously of a couple of her songs, including the 2 she did for Kingdom Hearts 3, which was Don't Think Twice and I can't remember the name of the other one. Probably should. Anyway, the ones that both of them which were done by Skrillex, because hey, why not? that sort of bizarre musical cul-de-sac that was like, hey, Skrillex is gonna do the soundtrack for Kingdom Hearts 3. So why not? So what you basically now, and that's a little bit sort of like, I can understand why, because there's this other, not only are you paying Disney, because these are actually released on Disney's record label, but you've also got to then entangle Sony Music with this, because Utada Hikaru is courtesy of Sony records, and it starts getting really expensive because it's Sony. So what you basically get for the rest of this album is sort of symphonic suites of the game music, and some of it's really good. Some of it's sort of like, and this is where we sort of return back to your point that you made earlier, and this is where I have to agree with you, Joe, to be entirely honest. Kingdom Hearts score is a really weird thing. In places, it's like, this is basically as close to the Disney music. This is a game series that after all has, the previous two obviously Final Fantasy 7's obviously Final Fantasy 7 Advent Children. This is the game that had the best version of dancing of One Winged Angel. Properly done for, and Magorski's Night on Bald Mountain from Fantasia, because Chernobog from Fantasia is literally a boss in Kingdom Hearts. and this and that, and you know, the Mickey Mouse March, and you know, all these sort of incidental bits of Disney music. And then you get to Pirates of the Caribbean and you go, well, hang on a minute, Disney, you literally own Pirates of the Caribbean. You literally have the money to ask Gore Verbinski or whoever did the soundtrack for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Hans Zimmer.
I think it's Hans Zimmer, and then it's arranged by like another bloke, Klaus Bautler or something. Anyway, but it's yeah, and it's like, okay, Disney, you own the music to Pirates of the Caribbean. You can literally go, would you mind doing like a nice sort of, you know, RPG-sized version of He's a Pirate? No, we get sort of generic-y pirate music. Despite the fact I'm pretty sure at one point Sora does literally sing the whole, you know, yo-ho, yo-ho, Pirates Like Me thing, which is like from the original ride. And it's like, okay. But it's...
This whole soundtrack is kind of unified to a fault. Like, it's all the same orchestra. It all kind of... I don't want to say all of it sounds the same because there are specific differences, but I did not realize that when Symphonic 3 separated to Symphonics 4, or there was like, there's not a lot of difference in Gods and Toys and the Pirates and Frozen.
Yeah, except when Randy
I
Newman
will say,
turns up.
Yeah, there's the random Randy Newman, You've Got a Friend in Me, that pops in after all of this choir is like, oh,
you've got a friend in me. Yeah, and the game itself is like, as the series as a whole is even weird. It's like, you know, there is obviously the famous bit from, you know, the aerial levels where it's like, here's, you know, the entirety of Under the Sea with the original, you know, scratch tracks and the original, you know, here tracks, and in Kingdom Hearts 3, here is the entirety of Let It Go, reanimated on the Kingdom Hearts, on the, or you know, the flipping, you know, engine, and it's like, okay, that's neat. You've got Idina Menzel here. You've got, you know, these, you know, the entire cast back of flipping Tangled, and you know,
they can't let Idina Menzel go.
No, and you know, the entire cast for Big Hero 6, and then it's so weirdly you have this sort of plinky plonky, you know, generic sort of nice. It's good generic. It's like good RPG music, but it's still like, but this is meant to be Disney. You're meant to be Disney, guys. You know, if the mouse is that, you know, powerful, if the mouse is that intent on making this the most Disney game ever, why is the music not there? It's this strange disconnect. And then obviously you get Overture to the Decisive Battle, which is 9 minutes of fucking awesome. And it's like, okay, now we are letting Yoko Shimura do Yoko Shimura things and make awesome fucking battle music. It's like 10
and that's the one I completely forget about every time I listen to. I don't know. I come from the Final Fantasy's, you know, realm of battle music, which is Nobuo Uematsu, who is much more melodic. And not that Yoko Shimomura doesn't have great battle music. Like, the battle music in Parasite Eve is really good. Like, even though I don't like Super Mario RPG, I could, like, remember the entirety of the Super Mario RPG battle music. It's just like, this one, it's just less melodic. It's, you know, a lot of playing the piano, but I don't remember any of it. And that was a problem I had with a lot of the CD is I don't remember it after I listened to it, which was very much of a problem when talking about it.
Yeah. Can you tell? I mean, I love this CD. I will put this on the background for, like, you know, reading or, you know, drawing or whatever. But at the same time, I will go, this is absolutely, you know, background music. This is music, you know, you have on in the background of a video game. It has some nice moments. It has some, you know, some other moments, you know, that you go, oh my god, this is a really dramatic moment. You could tell because Yoko Shimura is literally pummeling the piano next to you. And it's like, and eventually it will break. And it's like, but it's like at the same time, and I will say this about, you know, Kingdom Hearts. The best Kingdom Hearts album I personally own is the Piano Collections version, because it boils it down to, you know, what you know, what is the strong point of Uematsu's stuff, which is basically to melody. It's, you know, if you have a single instrument carrying your melody line, you have to make sure it works. And it works really well on the two Kingdom Hearts piano albums, to the extent that it's like, this is probably the best, if you want to go out and buy something of the Kingdom Hearts, soundtrack, buy the piano collections, because they are, one, really pretty, and two, actually probably the best versions of a lot of this music, because I will say this with Shimura's music on Kingdom Hearts, particularly on the earlier games, there is the limitation of the software. There is the limitation of, a early 2000s sound font. That's just going to happen because that's how far video game technology has come in. In that time, and
Okay, sorry, but it's just like, if you want to note, you listen to the original soundtrack to Final Fantasy 12. And it's Satoshi Sakamoto, who is orchestral, and I couldn't stand him for a long time because he had to use synthetic orchestra, which drives me fucking bonkers. And then you get to the new version of Final Fantasy 12, which has live instrumentation and probably better sound fonts and all of that, and it sounds absolutely marvelous.
Oh god,
it is a great soundtrack. That kind of tells you the box they're kind of forced in at the PlayStation 2, where you feel like it should sound better, but they're not at the point where they can.
I mean, if you compare, for example, the three versions of Dearly Beloved from 1, 2, and 3, it's astonishing. The version in 3 is just is one of the most brilliantly written bits of video game music, and the most brilliantly played. It's very well. It's got the emotive, and it is a damn good piece of music. And it's at this point we really need to start going, okay. Because there is this problem with video game music against what we could describe as quote-unquote the classical canon. And it's like, okay, and it sort of floats into what I would describe as, in a simple word, snobbishness. It's like, this is a music for, a video game. You can't, you get this sort of very, classical FM or Radio 3. Radio 3, for those who are wondering why I keep referring to Radio 3. Radio 3 is a British radio station that essentially plays classical and, experimental and sort of other stuff. It's, basically really, highbrow, intelligent stuff, and, that is where the BBC Problems is most of the time on the radio. Anyway, so we sort of basically get to this question of, one, is video game music proper classical music? Two, what is proper classical music? Because we start to get this. So here's the thing, if we go, okay, proper classical music is, it can't, we return to this concept of which obviously, ironically, Disney put very well in Fantasia of, total music, of music being, for something. Okay, well, if we talk about, only total music, being proper classical music, well, that discounts Swan Lake and the Nutcracker, and Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, and because those are soundtracks for ballets. Those can't be described as total music because they are designed for ballets. Okay, that's fine. Okay, let's also take out Verdi's Requiem, and Handel's Messiah, and basically any piece of classical music with a designed for a liturgical background, because that's meant for religious that's meant as the background for some religious ceremonies. Let's take out the funeral of Queen Mary, the famous piece of music from the beginning of The Shining, and let's take that out. Okay. And the problem is you start going, okay, well, what then is, proper classical music? Is it an age thing? Okay, well, that's fine. Well, how come we can then include things like, Philip Glass and, where do we cut off? Do we go, okay, but, classical music post 1950, that's not proper classical music. Okay, well, where does that leave, things like, John Williams and other things which we don't seem to have a problem with in the classical canon. You know, like, oh, you know, the amount for, so let's take for example, obviously Classic FM obviously do this. Classic FM, which is another British radio station that does classical music, ranks its top classical composers every year. John Williams and other film composers regularly in that top 10. Okay, so that's regarded by an institution that not only is a classical music broadcaster, but a classical music, you know, label, because they put out music every year. Okay, so that's regarded as part of the classical canon. Okay, so where do we draw the line with, you know, what is, you know, whether video game music is proper classical music? Okay, let's look at the form. Well, let's take for example probably the two most famous pieces of music from Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI obviously has the, you know, the obviously the opera Draco and Amiria, which is a proper, you know, late Baroque, early sort of, you know, romantic period, you know, opera. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so that's, you know, that's proper classical music. You could put that in a class. That is a classically set piece of music. Okay, so that's, you know, proper music. Okay, let's look at Dancing Man. Well, Dancing Man is essentially building upon the blocks of Bach's for Catherine and Fugue. Okay, with elements obviously taken from, you know, the very, very classical. And you start going, okay, where is the line between classical music and video game music? Is video game music quote unquote classical music? And I honestly think yes it is. And that's the thing, you know, you go, okay, well, where do you do what, you know, let's take something like, you know, Aerith's theme. Aerith's theme, you know, is essentially, if you put it in a classical set, and this is the thing, in terms of setting, you know, I can go, okay, this is video game music, you know, because this is obviously, you know, designed for console. You take it into a classical setting and you go, oh, well, hang on a minute, this is definitely classical music. This exhibits, you know, Utamasu is influenced by Debussy, another, you know, major classical performance. He essentially plays in a style that sort of riffs upon, you know, particularly French and sort of Western European composers of, you know, the early 18th century to essentially the late 19th century, with elements obviously taken then also from British psychedelic rock, you know, and you know, obviously particularly with obviously, you know, One Winged Angel, which is essentially a fusion of Rite of Spring and Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze. And you sort of go, well, hang on a minute, this is classical music, this is classical setting. Now, oh God, I'm still going over it. So, yeah, this sort of goes, I mean, what's your view on this, Joe? Because it seems like, it does basically seem like, oh, no, we're part of this club. You can't be part of this club because your music comes from a lower art form. To me, that's what it feels like, you know, it's not proper classical music because it's, you know, it's not done in, it's, you know, it's excerpts. Well, this is the thing, you know, you go, yeah.
Depends on what you're talking about. Like,
yeah.
It depends on what the soundtrack's trying to do, because as of, I know quite a few video game composers, and they will tell you that, you know, their worst soundtrack is when people want them to do it like approach it as cinematically.
Yeah.
And also cinematic as finally got shoehorned into classical.
Yeah.
So I mean there are certainly soundtracks that fit into classical, and I think they do work. Like I would say a lot of the Final Fantasy does.
Yeah.
Like after a certain point, because obviously Final Fantasy VI is trying to be operatic. It is trying to check off all of those boxes to the point where it literally has an opera in it. And
completely giant octopus.
There are, I mean, some things like you would put some Metal Gear Solid music into classical, but I don't think a lot of Metal Gear Solid would fit. No. Like, you definitely wouldn't put Revengeance in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's like, you know, all video game classical, all video game music is classical music any more than, you know, I'm saying all film music is classical music. You know,
I do think these concerts deserve to stand along with other stuff, and they deserve to be a piece, because like all of the classical, it doesn't come from nowhere.
No, absolutely.
It doesn't. It's just this fit where they just put this for people to listen to, and they come in and it's like, oh, that's very nice. But that they are attached to operas, they are attached to prayers, they are attached to everything else. And
absolutely, absolutely.
And opera, despite how highbrow it is, it was the melodramatic trash of the high class people. Like you have Carmen, which is Carmen works in a cigarette factory and murders someone.
Yeah.
And then seduces her way out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Until she can't seduce her way out of it.
And obviously you have operetta, you get Gilbert and Sullivan. It's like, well, you can't exactly say, Gilbert and Sullivan, who are like, even with both definitions we've got of classical music. Gilbert and Sullivan, technically, yes, that floats into classical music because it's like it's comic operetta, but it's still, you still go to a record shop. It wouldn't be in the operetta section. It would be in the classical music section. It's like, and obviously you do get into a sort of a question of genre. You go, okay, but do we take something like with far more rock elements, like I don't know, in terms of Square Enix, is all of Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII, even the remake, is that classical? Well, no, because some of it is, hard rock, and some of it is, sort of funk. And, I'm not saying all video game music is classical music, but, when it is, particularly in a setting like this, and obviously some of the pieces are deliberately trying to be, of the classical canon or deserve to be of the classical canon. I mean, this is obviously we go back to Final Fantasy VII, we go back to Aerith's theme. Aerith's theme regularly appears in the classic FM, roundup of the year of the best pieces of best of music. It regularly gets in the top 10 because it is, it captures it drills down to what, music, all music, classical music, is, which is, this sort of, this perfect sense of, you listen to that piece of music and you have the idea of Aerith. You listen to, things like, the Lark Ascending, you have the idea that, you have, and absolutely, I'm not saying in all places, video game, I mean, we couldn't, we're not going to turn around and say, oh, Doom Eternal, with flipping Mick Gordon just chugging along his classical music. But, if you took Mick Gordon's music and you put it into a classical setting and you went, here is a concert of all the music that Mick Gordon has done for, Doom and Doom Eternal, here is the story of the Doom Slayer, and you did it in this sort of very, I don't know, string quartet or anything, you made this really aggressive, classical music, you can't go, oh no, that's not classical music, that's not proper classical music because it's come from this. It's like, well, what are we talking, the music from Star Wars, one of the most famous pieces of classical music, is this, how is this, a piece of the classical canon, or, the Superman march, or, this or the other. How is this a part of the classical repertoire, pieces of music as important as, Aerith's theme or Terra's theme, or, One Winged Angel or Dancing Man? How are they not in a classical setting part of the classical canon? It's like, it feels more like a question of, elitism against gaming as an entire art form from people in classical music than a measured approach to this is why video game music isn't it, because it essentially floats into incidental or light music, and absolutely it's like it feels like an elitist approach to a still very nascent art form.
But anyway, it's I feel like it does the stuff that does and that we do at concerts does fit along with everything else, and it should belong. It's just the new classical because we always have there's new stuff and there's new ways, like the musical and how much musical is classical, or there's and it's just what fits and what doesn't, I think is more of the argument we're having right now. So but I'm sure they had the same arguments about opera. I'm sure they had does this fit into what we want to do? Does George Gershwin Like they probably have. Does George Gershwin's operas fit into classical? I'm sure
Absolutely.
they had that argument. So
yeah.
But anyway, I'm sure we have made our point, and we are getting to the hour mark.
And I'm getting a bit hoarse from this.
Yeah, I'll talk for a little bit. For this album in particular, I'll just go through the highlights. I was surprised how much I liked the music from 358/2 Days. I think they really got the parts where it was emotional, and I will use this a lot, but it's like it feels like where you can live in the moment rather than pass it by. And I think that part of it was really good. And obviously Dearly Beloved, that starts off, it is some like great work by Yoko Shimomura, and it is the steroided version of Dearly Beloved from the first game that they've just allowed to build up to this. So it is extremely very good. And then of the symphonic suites, I'm gonna go the third one, which is A Frozen Fracas. Because it really felt like the world of Frozen to a certain extent. I mean, I know you've said some of these are like riffing on the score, but like the symphonic suite for Toy Story, it doesn't really feel Toy Story until they do the interlude of You've Got a Friend in Me that really feels like it comes out of nowhere, and you're just like, they're doing it as a joke.
Hello, Randy. Goodbye, Randy.
Bye, Randy. Anyway, back to this music. But the third one, it really feels good, and the music is really fun to listen to. And those are my highlights. As a whole, I think the album is fine. It's very pretty. It's very good. It's just like you said, it's stuff you would put on the background than more than you would listen to this to just listen to this.
Yeah, and I mean, I should point out, like, at a lot of these concerts, obviously almost all these concerts, I have seen ones for obviously Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy 7, and Nier Automata, in which Yoko Taro turned up and waxed lyrical about his time in London in probably the strangest moment of last year. No, absolutely, they do have this visual element, and I feel like obviously without this visual element, I feel there would be, there is something missing from, this as a whole. You have to have that visual element of in these concerts, to be fair.
Yeah. Anyway, I think I have said my piece on all I've needed to be said. I just turned 39. I am not in the mode anymore where that famous comic, somebody is wrong on the internet. I'm not about that. Like, as I've said, I have left the Kingdom Hearts people in peace. There's a list of things well-liked things that I do not talk about. That it is rather long, and like, unless somebody's paying me money, like now, I do not talk about it. And it's one of those, like, go in peace, have fun, enjoy it. There's nothing like objectionable. It's not like Super Lovers or something like offensive. I just don't like this, and it makes me angry because my experience was terrible. That is my thing, and I don't want to be the guy who yells that terrible thing on the internet. That time's passed. I can't make the money anymore. But
besides, Joe, you got more than your share of convoluted games with pretty anime people into play anyway.
But anyway, that's my stuff. Do you want to finish your stuff and then we can wrap this up?
I fucking love Kingdom Hearts. I mean, I feel like I cannot be objectively biased. I'm completely biased. I mean, I'm sitting at my desk.
There's no such thing as an objectionable objective opinion. No. Objectionable opinion. Absolutely.
I'm sitting on my desk. There is a fucking Riku and Sora figures on my desk. I can't be like objective about this at all. I fucking love Kingdom Hearts. It's one of my favourite game series. Tetsuya Nomura is a mad fucking maniac who probably shouldn't really be allowed to make games, and yet here we are in 2021 where he's masterminding 2 of them. It's just the guy is a maniac. maniac, and we're just along on his wild journey of belts and homoeroticism. I mean, I love the game, and the music for this game series is just great. I mean, it's like, I genuinely love Dearly Beloved. I used to have Dearly Beloved as my alarm in the morning, and it is one of the few times I've had a piece of music on as my alarm in the morning and not wanted to throttle the person who wrote it to death within 3 months. So there we are.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And hey, it's, you know, this music is sort of wrapped up with a really nice experience I had with my friends. So thank you for recommending this album, Shelley. It's been really nice to talk about it again.
Okay.
Okay,
Hopefully,
so
finally this time, we will get to talk about the anime we've been trying to get to for 3 months, but we've had Patreon, we've had, Patreon exclusive episodes, like, you go ahead and talk about the Patreon, because we gotta do the thing.
I will do the thing. So, yeah, if you would like a Patreon episode like this, because we are doing these and we have Patreons, and I am stalling for time as I try and find our Patreon. 1 second. There we go. I will hop onto that. Who's your favourite Kingdom Hearts character, Joe?
No comment.
No comment. Anyway, so yes, we have a Patreon. If you would like to subscribe to our Patreon, and would like us to do an episode for you, because we will talk about music and anime, and to be honest, frankly, anything, as long as it's as long as it's not like, here, watch all of Lost, because we will object to that, and it's Lost, and we don't want to watch Lost. It was never good.
I worked at an ABC station when we ran Lost, and I was the one who watched the final episode as it was going on, and then I had the phone over here looking at the reaction, and it's just like, oh boy.
And the viewer thing is just dropping like on this, just in free fall. So yes, if you would like to first off, if we have a Patreon, you can subscribe to our Patreon for just from £1 or $1.20 a month, because it's a currency thing. I don't know, America. But if you would like us to make a episode, we on our highest Patreon tier, which is just £5 a month, you can request we talk about something, and to be honest, as long as it's not too long or not, as we've said, objectionable, because we are not watching Saw. we're not doing this, and we're not watching certain anime series. And if you actually recommend that anime series, we will hunt you down and kill you.
No, we will not. Legally, I have to say we will not do this.
Hunt you down and kill him, or watch it? Both. Let's go both. Yeah, we can be found at patreon.com/The Tom and Joe Show. Alternatively, you want to follow us on social media and get all of our behind the scenes sort of stuff and the other stuff we do, because we do a lot of stuff between the two of us. That is on Twitter at NotSoFinalProd. So until next time, I've been Tom.
I'm Joe.
And we will see you next time when we are finally back to anime with Aharo X Machine Gun. See you later.
See you later.